Good evening, everybody. It is 6 o'clock, so I would like to call this meeting of the Plympton School Committee to order on March 9th, 2026. And do want to acknowledge we're being recorded by Area 58 and also by our owl here. Is there anybody this evening who would like to speak to the committee as part of public participation? Well, appreciate you all being here and being invested in the Dennett and in the children of Plympton. Moving on to school committee correspondence, I have received none. Did you get one, Jill?
I have not.
Okay, excellent. Good evening. Oh, sorry. No problem at all. I'm happy to have you.
Traffic.
Yeah, I understand. About 3 minutes before we went live, I was the only one here and they were making me very nervous. So I'm very happy you're here. All right, so we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Going to call out the 4 components. If you want to hold any of them, let me know. So the consent agenda includes the approval of our minutes from our February 9th meeting, the approval of warrants and the bill schedule, the approval of grants, donations, and awards, the approval of financials.
Hold the financials.
Okay, I'll hold on the financials. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda with the exception of the held financials?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Pretty sure the donation of the 3D printer, the individual who donated to us is here in the audience this evening. Just like to say thank you for thinking of us and appreciate that donation on behalf of the students. All right. Seeing no,
It's accepted.
well, we're about to vote.
Oh, okay.
Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
We've accepted your donation. Thank you, sir. All right. Would you like to do the financials now, John?
Sure. I guess the first thing I noticed, I'm not sure what was different this time about how they were uploaded, but like I can't download them off of Google, and I checked last month and it was fine, so it's gotta be the type of file that's put in.
I downloaded it.
Oh, yeah, well, I downloaded it. It
Yeah.
just wasn't anything I could read.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so there's something going on there, so, but I did save the open screen I had, so go through that, so it's probably just some cameras. Yeah. So I guess, just a couple things. One, when do we expect to get the extended school year monies like moved in? It just seems strange that we're 6 months into the school year. Shouldn't that money move around?
So, Stephanie, I'm going to give you a little bit of background. Extended school year is housed here.
Yeah.
And then we bill the other two schools. One school, Halifax?
Correct.
Okay. So I believe that there's been no delay from the town.
Okay, yeah,
Is that
yeah,
accurate?
yes.
So I just wanted to give her some background because I'm
Yeah,
not.
no, I- These
So,
folks,
so we are running into a delay with the town of Halifax.
so they haven't printed the money yet?
They haven't finished their end of year.
Okay, I see. So they're still. Right. And then I guess the other one that I'm still watching is that I know we have an overage in Collaborative, it's like 30,000. And so how is that, are we using, like what are we using to cover that off? I know there was going to be a meeting to talk about what that is. I just don't want something else showing up as we get closer to the end of the fiscal year. So are we using excess, circuit breaker funds, or how are we covering that off? Because it's over what was budgeted, and it's a decent size.
Yeah, so Heather and I, with Sarah and Karen, who does all the financials for the special education department, we did have a meeting about 3 weeks ago, and what is going to happen is we're going to use grant money, specifically the 262, 240, and circuit breaker to offset that negative balance.
Okay. And then anything else in here that's showing up negative, we're confident we're going to be able to
To balance at the end of the
balance
school
it.
year.
Okay. Right. That's all I have.
And I will ask Karen about the how the PDF was saved to try to avoid that in the future.
It's really, I'm glad it happened. Two, I want to two, I felt like it was maybe it was a meeting.
It's just those two files. Every other file was fine. So,
Okay.
Yeah, and last month,
did you guys see it too?
Yeah, it didn't populate in my shared drive the same way either.
Oh, download and open it, okay.
because I tend to download beforehand because my cell signal is a little bit.
Any other questions or comments about the financial? Seeing no, entertain a motion to approve the financial report.
So is there any other feedback or that? Just no.
Do you want to second that and then we can take further discussion?
Okay.
Second, okay. Do you have another question?
No, I just didn't know if from the finance perspective, we went one way, we haven't gone back, and if there's any other information coming forth on the report to discuss, or it is
Well,
what
I
it is.
think the process is, since we have it in the consent agenda now, it's different than what we were doing before, where we get a report out. So typically, we look
Okay.
at it, we ask questions, and then if there was something special, they'll hold it.
Oh,
So we're encouraged to take a vote since we have the fiduciary responsibility over the district's money on quarterly or monthly reports or as we receive them of the financials. So something that's a little bit newer that we've been doing the past couple of years. But, and generally, if there's a big deficit or a big surplus, that would come out from the director themselves, or one of us would catch something that just interests us and we'd ask the questions as well. So, two-way street of communication. All right. Any further discussion? So we have a motion to accept the financial. We have a second. Seeing no further conversation, all those in favor? Aye. Okay, excellent. And we're moving on to the budget.
So if I could ask, either Principal Benito. Oh, yeah, even better. Thank you. Hi, Tech.
it's the best we can do.
Thank you. So we have a few updates tonight from the last time that we presented, and you recall that we presented originally in December. So a few things have changed. Our goals and the 10-year enrollment trend has not changed since the first time we presented. But the school, the shared cost budget has been voted, and we know that 2 additional students have applied for admission as of February of 2026, which we discussed at the last meeting, I believe. No new applications are known at this time, and we will not know
Until after April, right?
until after April 1st.
That's the deadline to apply.
Yes. And you recall,
And then when do we know that they got it?
well,
Because that's a separate issue.
so Sarah has stated in the past, and I don't know if it was at this school committee meeting or another school committee meeting, but that she often spends all summer trying to track down who's going where sometimes.
It's official.
Yeah.
I mean, theoretically, do we know who the kids are? Can we ask them? Like, they'll know.
Well, but there's obviously, if the application deadline obviously, I think first, there's gotta be, what's it called? There's the lottery.
Yes.
And so there's gonna be a period of time. So, best case scenario, we're not gonna know for, May, June. Right?
We're going to do our best to understand where our students are going as quickly as possible. And, but at this point, the applications are due April 1st. So we'll have some indication there whether or not some families might self-report to us that they've decided not to do it. And we'll update you as soon as we know that.
And some families do let us know right away because they also want to make sure that transportation is being secured and things of that nature. It's just we can't guarantee April 2nd that we're going to have a clear picture for you. Also, changes since the preliminary budget include removing the phone system from Capital Tech and recognizing that we'll be submitting a town warrant article for $12,100 for the phones. We added funds for the yearly playground inspection. That's $5,000. We added tuition and transportation for the 3 additional out-of-district. 2 are out-of-district vocational, and then there's also special education increased costs in that number of 224. The shared cost budget was voted and has been included in these calculations. So that also has resulted in changes to our totals since December. Level services is $5,075,098. After offsets of circuit breaker estimated at 70% and 50% for transportation, and grants and revolving account estimates. And I want to extend a special thank you to our chair, Jason Frazier, and the town of Plympton for working to try to provide additional opportunities for us to use grant funding as well to try to offset the expenses in this budget and to try to minimize reductions as much as possible. The Plympton appropriation after those offsets would be $4,767,500, and I think that's a 3, but maybe a 5 from here. Thank you. Which would be a 7.62% increase over FY26.
So, if I could,
Mm-hmm.
as many of you know that we receive rural aid in the form of a grant, and in FY25, our grant allocation was $65,000. Unfortunately, in FY26, it was diminished back down to $45,000. What we did here is I authorized the superintendent to include $60,000 in rural aid, hoping that we will at least get that amount. But even if we get what we got last year, we do have enough left in the reserve fund that we can pull from it to realize the $60,000. We are pushing desperately for the rural aid to be increased, and Governor Healy did increase it substantially in House 1. It really comes down to whether or not the Speaker of the House, who is a city representative, has it in his soul to keep whole the rural districts of Massachusetts, as he did with the Student Opportunity Act, which gave billions and billions of dollars to the urban districts of Massachusetts. So really hoping that this is a realistic number and we don't have to come back to the table later on. And worked with our town manager to make sure that this was a reasonable number to put in, and it did save some of the pain that we might face this evening in some of the conversations.
So in order to meet a budget of a 2.5% increase plus the 84,000 increase we discussed last meeting because of the vocational, 2 additional vocational placements that we have budgeted for, the new total would be $4,624,750. This would require $122,795 to be cut from the level service budget. So, thanks to the PRISM grant, we reduced the curriculum budget by $45,000. We reduced technology, and so that will be felt in the ability to replace and update certain technology features. We've reduced that by $15,000. We've reduced the supplies for the school by $2,000. Unfortunately, that only gets us part of the way there, and we had to begin reducing by FTE. We would need to reduce the librarian position to 0.8. We would reduce speech to 0.6, and we would reduce the school psychologist to 0.8 FTE. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with FTE, a full-time equivalency is a 1.0. So
It's all currently 1.0.
they, I believe the librarian and the school psychologist were both 1.0.
Correct.
Speech was 0.8?
0.8.
0.8.
So could you go back one slide, please? So when I met with the finance committee, they gave us guidance of 2.5%. As you can recall, and we got the 2 additional vocational students, right after I found out what our net increase to Chapter 70 was going to be. And it was pretty much a perfect offset. So I reached back out to the chair of the finance committee and the town manager to get approval to put the $84,000 above the 2.5% budget increase, because the net effect on the town's coffers will be 2.5%. But we're literally facing a year where 2.5% keeps being said over and over again, because that's what we're limited by because of Proposition 2.5. We're only anticipating about $100,000 of new growth townwide, and that's an estimate. And we're so close to the levy, there's no money from previous fiscal years to really draw from. So that's why we were up against it. And then we had an additional student placement that came in recently at the 11th hour, which has put us in the position where we have to face these cuts. We did look under every rock. We did try and see if there was any alternative funding sources. But at this point, that is a true number that we have to look at cutting this evening to make sure it's within the town's capabilities to fund for FY27.
So class sizes would remain unchanged since the last time we presented for 26-27. And we have included the assessment summary. Both HES and Dennett Elementary School are highlighted in yellow because those budgets have yet to be voted by the school committees. And we have also included the total cost of education. So it's the assessments and the operating budget, which the percentages are over to the far right, which are difficult for me to read from this angle, but they're
Yeah.
there for your review.
And if you look at the total cost of education for Plympton, it's close to a 6. And we had a bounce back year assessment wise at Silver Lake. Last year we were close to a 0.8% increase. And this year we had a population increase that pushed us to an 8% increase nearly, driving our total cost of education to close to $450,000 for Plympton this year. Again, when people wonder, is there any extra room? When you have 2.5% plus local growth and what's left with the levy, that eats it up pretty much right there without anything additional.
I would remind that the last 3 budget years, the town has stepped up with significant increases.
Absolutely.
And this year there is no more.
Right.
So, with the assumption of a 2.5 plus the additional funding that you were able to secure, we have prepared anticipated vote language should that be the will of the committee.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
Let's open it up for discussion, questions, comments from the committee, and then I will definitely entertain any from the audience as well. I was devastated when I saw what we were going to have to do tonight. That was my first reaction.
Especially in light of what was before. This additional out of district kind of upended everything.
That's right. But again, we've always held as a committee and as a district that we have the legal but also moral obligation to take care of our most needy students and meet them where they are and give them the resources to become the best they can be. But again, this is where we're getting struck on an economy of scale setting.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if the rural aid package came through, it's not just $60 million a year. We would also qualify for circuit breaker the year in which we encumber the cost, right? Because an out-of-district placement of $140,000 for us, $140,000 is 3.5% of our overall budget, right? So we're trying to square our moral obligation, legal obligation to individuals, and the other side, the flip side of the coin is we are now literally reducing the services here in the building for the students.
And are we able to ask for an override?
So an override can only forth by one group of people in town, and that's the Board of Selectmen.
Right.
So we could approach them, but the guidance I've been given from the Finance Committee and the town manager is to try and handle the budget within the constraints of the current fiscal situation.
So, thank you for talking first. I guess a couple things. I mean, I know it's a sensitive topic, but like to find out that we have, like, not just replacement, you know, at 60 or 70 grand is one thing, but not just replacement. 140 is a whole different impact to the budget. I know that things are unprocessed and they're not done to get done, but I do think we need to figure out a better way to telegraph this, because if we were earlier in the budget cycle, we might be able to get a little more from the town. But, you know, they've got everyone already looking for different things, and we're only a piece of that. Plus, no one's getting 2.5% increases, they're getting 3% increases. So for all of the employment that we have in town, police, fire, schools, town offices, you know, you're already ahead of 2.5%. I mean, seeing all the news on the South Shore, everyone's facing this. And yeah, there's overrides, but an override is not something to cover, you know, a $90,000 deficit. An override is something to cover additional school expenditures and other expenditures that might be in town for 5 to 7 years to be successful. Plus, we basically tried to override last year as a debt exclusion. The town very clearly said no. So I think that's probably a challenge. I guess one of the things I think we need to start looking at from a planning perspective is understanding by grade and total amount where we have out-of-district placements.
Can I clarify, out of district, and this number is not just special education, it's also vocational students, so I don't want you to think.
140 is,
Okay, just
84 is
but the increase
You know, I
of the
understand
2,000,
that.
I'm sensitive to it not being all
I'm
special
talking about the
education.
140. And I also would prefer those numbers to stay broken out, not the total sum, because they're different buckets of money. And if we're lucky, maybe a student decides not to go, that might give us some opportunity for the new school year starts to adjust something, if that ends up being the way. But I think we need to better understand the planning, because of course now the way that special ed is set up here, when it hits 7th grade, it goes into the silver budget, and that changes allocations depending on everything going on there. And so understanding sort of where these somewhat cliffs are is going to be important from an overall planning perspective. I guess one of the questions I have is it does look like, based on what we were getting last year for circuit breaker, that the circuit breaker number is already adjusted for what we expect to get next year based on what we did this year, because we're going to increase increase. So those numbers are already accounted for based on what we can estimate.
We estimated at 70% for tuition and 50% for transportation.
And that's based on the increases we've had in this fiscal year, because everything's the year of time. Right.
It's based upon our expenses, yes.
And then with $140,000 placement, is that something we can really apply for additional relief for?
So you can apply for extraordinary relief, and we do that as practice for actually all 4 districts anyway. That is if the out-of-district tuition is 125% greater than what had been budgeted for. And I don't believe our out-of-district tuition is 125% greater than what had been budgeted before, which means we probably wouldn't qualify for extraordinary relief.
But no, I do think, and it's not obviously for tonight, but I do think we need to have a better understanding from a financial picture perspective of how things laying out by grade, not by student.
I think
So-
one of the things about
Yeah.
that is if I identify one grade, I'm going to identify the student most
Well,
likely.
we need to have an idea of how, and we have to figure out how we can do that. So if we need to talk to Russ about it, we need to be able to have an idea of how to understand how the budget is impacted.
So Russ is not our special education attorney, so we would have Heather speak with Stoneman, Chandler, and Miller.
I understand
Yep.
I've been doing this a long time. I understand the challenges, and we don't want to do that. It's not about the individual students, it's not about providing services, but we need to understand financially, because I don't see huge new growth, and we're gonna run into this problem again and again if we don't have funding coming from the state. And it's gonna get worse. Because we no longer have that room under the levy that we've had in the past years. And we will be up against it override at some point. We're kind of too late for this year to be successful.
Anybody else with questions, comments, concerns about the budget or where we go from here?
Kind of a general question / statement that I know really doesn't have a full answer, but we're looking at very specific, not here, previous slide, looking at changing the FTE numbers. So we're altering people's lives, which is something you don't do lightly, obviously.
Okay.
I'm going to have to assume, just looking at the nuances of the budget, the gazillion pots, that you all did that in such a way that you already looked high and low to find something so we could avoid the potential human aspect to it. And that's, I'm going to assume that happened, but
Yes.
I don't know
and-
how all that magic happens. I can't, I mean, it's a huge budget, I get it, it's not easy.
Yes, and if you recall, we have a difficult time of it with this budget, and we've gone very close to the edge before in the past, and we've actually had to go back to the town for money in the past because we've cut so thin. So we're
Yeah, so,
we've shared the assumptions, but even within these assumptions, we may not get what we anticipate. So we've gone as far as we can to feel like we've done everything we could and be responsible in projecting it to you.
right. So in FY,
Assume.
yeah,
I wanted to ask.
in FY '25, that was the year where we cut pretty much to the bone, and I remember being on the phone with Liz 25 minutes before we were going to announce some reductions in force here, and she said, we found some money, it's an ARPA, income replacement, like, we'll figure it out. Don't riff anybody this year, but we were so close to the bone that year at town meeting, we did have to come back and ask for some supplemental funds. Last year, if you recall, we were up and down with the deficit in our budget. At some points, we thought we were 7 or 8% overspent in the budget. And again, we finally got to the nth hour, and John and I were on the phone with Sarah the night before town meeting to make sure we had the appropriate language, and we ended up not needing any money from the town. So we're again presenting a budget that's so lean that there's nothing to say we might not have 1, 2, or 3 additional things pop up mid-year through the cycle that are unanticipated. I can tell you that we still have the special ed reserve fund of about $50,000, but you can see how far $50,000 will go. And it can only be used for special ed. We could have something pop up that's not special ed related. And as Dr. Prue mentioned, we're making some assumptions about grants and entitlements and funding. And I can tell you right now that I've been told by the Department of Education they don't know if they're even going to put out their rural aid grants this year because they don't have enough people to even look through the data to see who qualifies because they've been cut so far. So they have the funds, but they don't have the people to even look at the data to allocate them right now. And we have REAP grants, that's the federal rural aid, as part of our number that we're counting on to keep this number to 122,795 in cuts. We struggled offline with how far do we lean into this responsibly. And, you know, going to 60 in the rural aid from Massachusetts was a pretty deep ask considering we only got 45 this year, right? So there's no easy answers, but I know Jill and Peter did not enjoy making the list, but they went over everything they could find in our budget to try and avoid personnel at all costs.
My worry is that, you know, we talked about how one out-of-district special education blew this all wide open, and there's a couple of positions here that impact those services.
Mhm.
And my worry is if we take somebody to less than a full-time position, are they going to leave? We're experiencing that with our town manager, not in this case, but she's going somewhere else. How are we going to support the students that need that? And I could see this as a path to more out-of-district placements.
That's always been the fear. John's articulated that many times when we started seeing diminishment in our aides in the building. And realizing, number one, when you have a qualified aide who cares deeply about the student and who has that relationship with the school, the student benefits from it, keeping them with their friends in their neighborhood school, but we also benefit from it financially, right? But again, where do you find the money to make it happen is the big question that we're up against right now. You know, we were on a knife's edge, and unfortunately, we slipped over the edge.
And I mean, we certainly can share this with the finance committee. And as they continue going through things between now and March, or even now in town meeting, if something changes, we can always amend on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just kind of what it is.
Right. And unfortunately, it's about $75,000 to keep our people. So, not saying that we won't turn over those rocks. We won't look for alternative revenue streams. We won't
Call on
hunt
April
down
2nd
and
if
see
we
if
can.
people put in those applications or not, right?
Yep.
We're going to be doing all of those things to try and make this whole and make it work. But the reality of where we are right now tonight is what's presented to you this evening on this slideshow.
Can I ask the administration to prioritize this list for us?
Mm-hmm.
It's
You don't have to do it right now, but you know, you can let Jason know what the priority is, because I think that would be important to pass on to FinCom, should they be able to.
obviously, we'd prefer to cut the things before any of the positions.
Yes, but we also may not, we may have to rank the positions.
Mhm.
So we
Yep.
can do that offline.
Mhm.
Anybody else? Questions? Need a minute to think about it?
The one thing I would ask is if we could put into the folder, if we could put a revised budget, should we go with this tonight? The folder, all the numbers and lines,
The detail.
detail. That would just be good.
Yeah. Okay.
You wanted the updated budget that accompanies the voted budget.
Yeah.
So the financial,
Yeah.
that will accompany.
Okay.
Like what we had last month,
Mhm.
but updated for this. Yeah, not a rush.
Mhm.
Do that, then we could follow.
I'm not closing it to the committee. I'm going to give you time to think. If that's acceptable, I'm going to go to Alex. Alex?
I got at least a couple of questions, so stick with me for a minute if you don't mind. So, can we go back to that slide that we're talking about, the positions and items being cut? Do you mind? So, I'm gonna focus, I'm gonna be selfish for a little bit as a parent of a child in
Mhm.
school. For the items where we're cutting, essentially 0.2 from each one of those three positions, essentially we're cutting 1 day of each of those staffs.
That's right.
What exact services are we cutting for those days?
Peter?
I'd like to.
Peter and Heather?
So, I think in terms of related services, I know the speech service delivery had previously been at a 0.6, had gone up maybe just last year as a
It was last
0.8,
year,
and then to be able to look at what the caseloads are. And so I'm actually as part of the regionalization study, I actually created an entire spreadsheet of all of the schools, all of the grades, all of the percents, how many kids are being evaluated, what does that look like side by side by side, and looking at what that looks like. And it's not about people, right? Like I also have to say that this isn't done easily because we know it impacts people, really good people. And I think what's really difficult actually about not being regionalized is not being able to share resources. So, one of the things is if we have out of district and we have 6 preschoolers who are all medically fragile, Plympton can't handle one medically fragile with the need for the nurse and the things and all of the extra equipment. But, and when you start to part and parcel, that's where these impacts to not being regionalized are in terms of evaluations, looking at how many evaluations are done, what is the role of school psychologist, team chair, what does it look like for a building of 250 students when the next match building is 530, what does that look like in terms of it? So those are all data points that are analyzed. Now, are there things that may be done that support the building, support students that aren't necessarily perfectly matched to the role of a school psychologist, team chair? That's where those discussions come, because it comes to an impact of the building. But if you were doing line by line comparison for what's the expectations of the role, that's where that decision came from. It does not mean that there aren't other things that people do in the roles and the positions.
Sure. So, and I appreciate the answer, and that's good information. But my specific ask was exactly what services are getting dropped in that day per person.
So what should be, based on that, it shouldn't be special education service delivery. It might be additional supports. It might be other consultation. It might be duties. It might be, and do you want to speak to some of those other things that might happen outside of service delivery?
The day-to-day child that might be having a difficult time, might be dysregulated that day. If I'm tied up, a lot of times they'll defer to Christine. If Christine's tied up, we'll defer to the school psych and then to our team of people that are trained to handle students in that situation. Those are the potential impacts in that scenario.
Okay, so but when we decided those two positions, speech and child psychologist are kind of personal to me. When we decided those two positions, what specifically were we saying they will have time, somebody else will fulfill these tasks, or we don't have to do them in the building? What specifically are we getting at here? That we said we can afford a day of someone's time doing those tasks.
I don't know if we can afford, any of us would agree on that,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, but I'm trying to drive to a point, right? Like the point
Yep.
is, so speech and child psychology, I believe both fall under special education.
So these are special education, and
Okay.
believe me, it's a difficult thing because you come against combining some of those things to classroom teacher, right?
Nope, that's not.
But
That's not
that's,
what
but I think it's, if you're asking, how do we come to this, we look at what is the cost benefit to what is happening. So I know that you're driving to a point, right? And
Yeah.
as a special education director, believe me, the conversations behind closed doors, I advocate, I fight, but I also have to look at what is the cost, benefit, and impact to an entire building of students. What is the least impactful things that we can try and do? Because if you're to start to combine some of those, that could be a classroom teacher with a giant class size. A larger class size impacts students with disabilities. It impacts, behavior. It impacts safety. Those are some of the conversations.
Yep,
that
that's
are
not what's driving my point, right? That, and I completely agree with you.
So I guess.
Alex, can you say what your point is?
Thank you.
Sure. One, so if it wasn't for the child psychologist last year, I'm not sure my son would have made it through the year. She was absolutely integral to his success. So I'm specifically looking to know what services would that person not be able to apply to children like my son for my son directly. And then furthering that, how are those services less than what the other student who's coming in is valued at? So this 122,000, I think it was 140.
We're not going to play one student versus the other.
No, I
though.
don't want to do that. I'm saying how.
But I
how
just
do we
wanna
not have an
caution-
avenue to go to somewhere else, some state agency to we're reducing the services here at the risk of not the risk at the benefit of this other student is equally as viable.
So that's an argument that I've been bringing to the Executive Office of Education, the legislature, DESE and BESE for several years now. Because the cost of special education, especially out of district, has outpaced 2.5+ local growth statewide. There's a bill right now that literally would handicap the executive office that puts the inflation adjustment onto private special ed schools to match what Chapter 70 comes out each and every year. Like they'd be tied together. For 3 years, the number went up 25% in 3 years, where we realized about an 8 or 9% increase in Chapter 70, right?
And I'm not saying one is any more valuable than the other.
Absolutely.
I'm just saying we shouldn't have to choose one over the other.
I'm with you 100%, but
I know-
unfortunately,
I know I'm preaching to the entire choir.
Yeah.
I'm fully aware of that. So, wanted to say that out loud to make sure I'm on the record.
thank you.
Second is I would specifically like to know again, I apologize for any.
So what I can say to you is like, those services won't change. It'll be the building and operational supports that have been given, but the services to students should not change.
Okay, so.
Please.
I'm Liz Goodman. I teach fifth grade here. I'm the co-president of the union. Just as a, can I try to answer your question from what
Oh, sure.
our daily sort of operations? So, our school psychologist. So first of all, we are I believe, the only elementary school in the district that doesn't, I know we're the smallest by far, but we don't have a behavior support and adjustment counselor. So, pardon me?
Is it, but you have a full-time school site, that's the cost piece.
Which Kingston and elementary and intermediate have.
But they're also double your size.
Correct. But, so, in terms of, our school psychologist chairs all of our special education meetings, the IEP meetings. So, she responds to the majority of calls of students in need. So without that one extra day, sort of that time period, if she is not available because she has to chair meetings or test or do any of those things, then if Ms. Marcolini is unavailable or Mr. Benito is unavailable because they're in meetings or anything else, then the special ed staff will get pulled from the students that they are servicing in order to meet the needs of the student who is in immediate need, right? To get them out of a classroom or to sort of calm them down, to meet their emotional needs. So between testing and meetings and supporting special ed students, those other things, those students in need who are not on IEPs, I don't know that we could rely on our school psychologists to do that in addition to meeting the needs of the IEP students. So all students who are needing emotional support that either the classroom teacher can't provide in the moment, or they just sort of need to come out, those at a point as opposed to a full time, that would be very difficult to do. The library, when I sort of looked quickly and talked to Colleen after school, she said, one of those things, and she does 2 days of teaching library, 2 days of teaching computer lab is sort of spread out, but then she does all of the maintenance of the library, putting all books away, checking all books in, selecting and ordering books, shelving books, repairing books. She does the book fair. That's all sort of in that extra time that she's not teaching students. This year, she started a digital skill lab, which is teaching students on IEPs and 504s to use the Google Read Write toolbar. So Google Read Write is, I can't speak to it completely, but it's sort of an extra.
It's an accessibility tool.
Yes. So she teaches that. We have no idea how to use it. We've never been taught how to use it. She teaches those kids on IEPs and 504s to access this accessibility tool. So that's another thing that she has taken on this year. I just, sorry, I feel very worked up, but knowing what these people do in a day, like I know I'm preaching to the choir, I understand that, but the ramifications of cutting specifically those two, because the speech runs on a straight up caseload. I mean, she does extra things right now, and she does a lot of them. She does RTI groups. She sees a lot of kids who aren't on an IEP, but she does that as an intervention to hope that she can prevent them from getting on an IEP. So she sees 9 students who are not on IEP meetings. She does 4 weekly classroom groups in kindergarten, for literacy groups. If she were to go down to 0.6, she wouldn't be, she'd have enough time to see the kids on her caseload, and that would maybe be it. Again, those caseloads change every year, depending on the outgoing and the incoming, but I just was taking sort of notes, I'm sorry. Jen, our school psychologist, probably sees a good 20 general ed kids during the week, in addition to her IEP kids, just kids in crisis, kids that just need a quick check-in, things like that. Those are also the kids that, because they're not on IEPs, wouldn't be supported in the same way.
I had a couple more questions.
One moment.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know if.
I'm probably not done, but I'm going to be done.
All right. Before you start up, just give me a second to respond.
Yep.
Yes. Thank
I
you.
know, I just wanted it out there.
I appreciate you saying it out loud. I appreciate the dialogue. I appreciate you advocating for your people and for the kids. I do. I want you to hear what we've said. We're sick. We don't like it. We're going to look under every single rock we can to try and figure this out. We've already begun that process. We're dealing with the reality in front of us as is right now in this very moment that none of us like. But that doesn't mean tonight is the end of the journey or the battle.
I know every year, come through it. And I appreciate that, but I also understand, there's a bottom to that well.
Yeah, there's only so many rocks, right? But we'll keep looking and keep turning them over. Alex?
So I had written down, and you mentioned it already, the special ed emergency fund that we spoke about a few years ago now.
Yes, sir.
We refunded at the end of last year. We refilled it 2%. We didn't use it. We did use it, and then we refilled it. We did use it.
Well, it was found, so you didn't have to use it, so it's still,
that's right.
it's still just there.
Sure.
But,
So,
but that's it.
yep, understood. Yeah, and we could refill it at some later point up to 2%, right?
2% of net school spending if we have the funds to refund it with.
So how does this, not saying we would, how does this not apply for as a potential use for the special ed emergency fund?
I can tell you that the philosophy of the Special Ed Reserve Fund is for unanticipated mid-year special ed costs. So
This is applying at the beginning of next year.
so if something happened in October, we'd have a pool of money to pull from, so we wouldn't have to go even deeper than you're seeing on the screen right now. Right? It's not applied in the year where you're still developing the budget.
And the other, sometimes, since you were part of our discussions when we cut all the fund, that budget, it barely scratched the surface.
Oh, yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
And so,
No, but
we don't even have that.
I know.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I'm in my 11th year on this committee. And we've spent there were years we could have brought the classroom teacher down and justified it under the budget, but we didn't do it for very specific reasons to make sure that the school could run efficiently, that we could do everything for the students. This is what we're doing. But but we have so little in reserve to deal with stuff that just happens, that if we cut all the way to that point, then you could have a mid-year like this in Southwood and Hanson, where they're doing mid-year layoffs. Because if there isn't the money, there isn't the money. And the town is, we're hoping to get through this year. And will we have to do an override? I don't see a way that we're not going to have to at some point in the near future. And I think that goes for probably every community on the South Shore. And some have tried and failed, and some have come back and have been successful. But you can't,
The idea of also,
even if we could put 50.
yeah, and the idea of using it would potentially create a fiscal cliff next year of that amount plus what we're trying to deal with this year.
We can't refill, and then we don't have a reserve. I just asked.
Yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we haven't been able to either, our budget has increased quite a bit, and we're not even at our 2%. But we had years when we first started building it, that we were able to build it, we haven't added to that in 3 years.
Now, what about so you had mentioned the override, right? And we had spoken about, it's not really the lever that you pull for this type of an issue, more for like 5 to 7 year success on it. We had
You can, but then next year you're back.
Sure, but could we lump this in with other items that we need for the school, for air conditioning units, roof work, or anything else? Could this be lumped in with a larger groupings of items, and it's services to the school in general?
Sure, but we don't have numbers for the other stuff. And it would be different too. So one would be, and you'd end up seeing two things on the ballot. One would be an override, and one would be a debt exclusion. Because you don't do an override for capital expenses. You do a debt exclusion because you want that to drop off when you're done paying it. And that's part we'll talk about a little bit later when we get to capital. That is probably the only thing that we will be pushing forward with is a building assessment in order to get that, start to figure that out, because or you're not going to have air conditioning.
So maybe air conditioners and roof work was a bad example.
No,
But the point of a larger package.
You're absolutely right. Unfortunately, for an override, at least what we've seen, for an override to be successful, you can't go back every year, and so you need to have a long-term plan. And even when you do have a long-term plan, I think your superintendent did and went the wrong way.
This time. But in previous years,
But-
his plan was sustainable for 5 to 7 years because you would lean on the increased revenue and the override the year of, and you would use excesses to put into reserve funds. So it wouldn't just be a 1-year deal. Let's try and fill the hole for fiscal year 27. It would be anticipate, the next several years.
And it probably wouldn't be just the school. It would probably be some other,
It'd be townwide.
that we need to, because we're all heading there again. If the biggest piece of the total town budget is salaries, and if salaries are not 2.5%, locked in 2.5%, we are eating away every single year. So we will have an override, or we will cut services. There's no other way about it. It's just the net.
And I've even been asked, do you really need the exact dollar figure that I've been discussing with town leadership several times, seeing if I would actually reduce the number further. And every time I say, no, this is exactly why I need this. Okay, just wanted to make sure, because that's how desperate they are to find every dollar right now.
So, listen, maybe the answer's not here today, but at least maybe we could consider, or at least keep an open mind to, maybe there's a possibility for an override that includes a larger package of items that's sustainable over X number of years, that can be palatable to the public of you know, voting electorate, the voting public.
That's the way to do it.
Rather than, I forget what it was, $122,000 or whatever.
Right, right.
All I'm saying is please consider it. Obviously, I know you guys are a smart group of folks, and I'm sure you will. But before stating the obvious, I'd like to at least keep that out there.
It's inevitable, Alex, and we have to make sure we do it right if we approach it, especially with the very intelligent people who are the voting base of Plympton. If we don't have it sewn up and straight, they're going to poke holes in it left and right. So we owe it to them, we owe it to the kids to make sure we do it right if we go forward with an override. And it will depend on the leadership of our town of whether or not that's even entertained in the future, right? So, you know, we're elected officials, the Board of Selectmen are elected officials, the Finance Committee are elected officials. That's why it's very important to be involved in municipal governance and making sure you're showing up at town meeting and making sure you're voting at the ballot box with informed decisions about who you're choosing to lead your town. And it's also sad when we see so many town positions that have vacancies as well and go unfulfilled. You know, we've had 4 years in a row now that no one's ran for the school committee on the ballot, right? Except for those of us who've run for re-election. Open seats have been filled by those people that we've recruited and brought up to the table. So we do need strong advocacy from both people in the audience and people at the table at all of these town levels. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
I just have one.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I know I'm multiple here. It's touchy subject. For the psychologist services, there's a comment before that so made me think. So direct student services relating to IEPs saying wouldn't be so my family specifically benefits from RTIs. Is that part of the impacted services?
Well, I think we have to lay out and, you know, look at what freedom and availability is there. You know, when you talk RTI-based services, you're looking at MTSS. That MTSS process is a general education process. It's not a special education process. It's looking at those supports beforehand. I think looking at who needs that, how do students require that support, what are the tiers of interventions before you get to that support, are all things that have to be laid out and considered before you access that type of support. I also want to address the not having a behaviorist, because we do contracted services, so we actually do contract outside of the district for a provider to come in to provide services to students. So it's not as if we aren't providing support. We are doing that, and contracted services tend to be more expensive than in-district support. So, you know, we are providing that. I wanted to make sure that I addressed that too for, you know, the students whose service deliveries or needs require that greater than a school psychologist.
So that behaviorist sees children and consults with teachers whose students, where the child specifically has it on their IEP. Whereas a behaviorist in a school, and would see children in crisis regardless of IEP minutes or regardless of them being.
Well, I think there are crisis teams that are set up that may include a behaviorist, may not. There's another building that is double this size that only is a 0.5, a behaviorist, and they have a crisis team to respond with tiers of people to respond depending upon what the grade is, who the student is, what their what their plan looks like. So there are ways to support students that aren't solely, supported by a school psychologist or a behaviorist. There are also times that those people may be doing service delivery because, they have services that they may not be able to respond. So I think there are ways in which to develop those support plans, to look at what those tiers are, to use the RTI and the MTSS, structures to look at what that looks like. So I think there are ways to provide supports. I can't give you minutes and exactly how much, but it's not as in absence of. Do you know what I mean? And understanding that there are other ways. There are other, you brought up not having a behaviorist. Like that. I understand that that's a difficulty. There are a lot of, I just started July 1st. So I have ideas and things that I'd love to be able to bring to the table, but not when we're developing budgets in October when I just got here and been here for a hot minute. You know what I mean? Like it takes time to understand the culture. It takes time to understand the people. It takes time to understand what are some of those idiosyncratic needs of 3 different elementary schools, that have some different structures and organizational pieces and the people to be able to do that. So, right now you make the best decisions you can based on collaborative discussions, and it's, and having repeated discussions and trying to go through this. It's not easy because it impacts people and really great people, and it's understanding how important the supports and services collectively help students. It's not easy.
Sure. And I understand that this is all in conversations. There's another student or students that are equally as deserving as mine, and I understand that.
But it's not even the out-of-district students, because students go out-of-district when your schools are not able to meet their needs. So one of the things I think you want to potentially hold on to, when we get to that, it's because the students' services or disability is so great that what we have here in the 4 walls of the Plympton schools can't meet that student's needs.
Sure.
So it's not an apples-to-apples comparison. It is at a point that maybe we keep the student here, but we're going to lose staff to provide other types of staffing, and that's if at best you're able to do that. So it's not those students have take more than mine. It's not about that. It's about everybody getting what they need, and what your fair does not mean equal. It's not even slices of the pie. It's looking at what are high needs versus low needs. And so that is something I think when we talk about straight numbers, some of that gets lost in the messaging. And when we have students who go out of districts, it's because they have such high needs that we are not able to meet those here, be it socially, behaviorally, medically, academically, or all of those things combined. That's why it's that. So I have a really hard time when we talk about those students versus your child, because you're not in a place to compare your children.
I'm not doing versus. I'm just saying everybody's equally as they're entitled to their own fair and appropriate education, no matter who they are. I'm just stating that over and over again so we're clear. For the RTI services specifically, though, so them being
Alex,
given us.
Alex,
Yep.
I am gonna have to say that's probably better to have offline at this point.
Fair.
I think you've articulated your concerns about the specific cuts and the impacts it will have on students here in the day-to-day at the Dennett.
Okay.
And again, I appreciate everybody's thoughtful conversations about the terrible situation we're finding ourselves in. Before I take a motion on this, does anybody from the committee have anything they'd like to add at this point?
Two quick thoughts.
Go
One,
ahead.
I think everyone here agrees that the way that we fund special education doesn't work, especially in smaller school districts, because you have a swing like that, and you have these stories of a student moving from one town to the next and bringing a couple $100,000 swing in budget. And for a small community like ours, that's 4, 5%, 6%. It happens in the city of Boston. They move from Cambridge to Boston. It's around there, right? And so there's that fundamental issue. And Department of Education has a good point about should have some skin in the game, but the way that it's set up right now doesn't work right? Because we won't see funding, any reimbursement funding for that into the following year. So we're absorbing this all in our budget, which is like the discussion we had last time between, you know, the increase in Chapter 70 and this added amount of vocational. You know, well, okay, we got an increase that offset. That happened to be great. It's been nice just to have had the increase for a day or two before we lost it. But we all have dreams. I think the second piece that I would just like to say before I offer a vote on this is that, you know, I agree completely with Jason. This is the start, not the end. That doesn't mean we're going to find something, but that's also why I asked for sort of a priority run on the list so that we can do what we can between now and town meeting and even the start of the school year to understand how things actually shape up, what ends up shaping up with these grants. It could go the opposite way too, but we'll have to deal with that if it comes to that. But you know, clearly, I don't think any of us like doing any sort of reductions like this. We prefer to add, we prefer to provide more services within the building. But when it comes down to where we're sort of at, we've notched the well and the well is not right.
Anybody else from the committee?
It was said that students go out of district for special ed when we can no longer serve them in our building. And my concern is that dropping the school psychologist down 1 day a week increases the pool of students who may now have to go outside of district. And are we being penny wise, pound foolish with this particular line item? It seems to me like we're trying to stretch a set of tires from 60,000 to 100,000, and we're going to have a problem in short order.
So this is a very difficult thing to respond to. So the reality is that we have school psychologists, full-time school psychologists with heavier caseloads who meet their obligations. In some cases, they have a behaviorist or an adjustment counselor, but their school is much larger. In the case of Plympton, you also have a director of student services, a coordinator of student services on campus. That's something that other schools do not have. Anticipating the argument, other schools have assistant principals, Dennett doesn't. The decision was made after scrutinizing caseloads and after much discussion. So the director of
And it was against other things
Right.
too. Do you know what I mean? Like there are things that you're not seeing on the list that were on the list that Pete is not going to share, you know, because those were part of conversations behind closed doors. So what you may or may not be aware is this may be the decision of the group that is the lesser of all evils. Do you know what I mean? And not. And
I understand what you're saying. I think
Yep.
for me, though, I almost view this
So-
as a fiduciary decision. I get that some of the other decisions may have cut services, but I view this as almost being
So
budgetary.
I force students to go out of district, particularly from Plympton, is because you don't have enough students to create a cohort or a matriculation. And that's what it tends to be. If some of our DLC classrooms have, 12 students, 8 students, 9 students, you don't have a population here large enough that would allow for a classroom teacher, 2 paras, so a $19,000 0.2 isn't going to be enough to be able to do that because you don't have enough. So the thing about saving kids from going out of district, it's really because there's not a cohort that you could build a program for, because one of my favorite things is to do program development, to be able to do that, having worked in them, developed them. It's cost effective when you have enough students to be able to do that. Plympton, at the size of 40 students in special education, isn't large enough to be able to do that. So I'm not sure. This is why regionalization, I believe, would be so important for Plympton, because you'll be able to join forces with other schools. Even if you looked at, just pick a 4th grade, right? So if school A has 3 4th grades and they're at like 15, 15, and 14, and school B has, 20, 20, and 20, you're not going to be able to share some of the kids from school B to school A to be able to, make nice 18, student caseloads. So that's where that this is. I'm not sure what the size Plympton is. It's going to be difficult to keep students here, and I'm not sure 0.2 of a school psychologist would do that depending upon the needs of the students. It's about the size, and it's about making cohorts and groups of students, because there's like a 48 month. You can't have more than 48 months between, the oldest and youngest students. You're in a kindergarten to 6, so, you now have to have 2, and that's, the 2 paras, the 2 teachers. It's not going to be enough, because to cost save, you actually have to be able to cost save, and in Plympton, at the size it is going to be really difficult to be able to do that.
Okay.
And let me remind everyone, we're not voting the list of cuts, we're voting the bottom line number.
That's what I was going to ask.
And again, there's the opportunity for adjustments to be made if necessary and if we're able to at a later date.
So to be clear, we're just voting on the deficit, the 144 and change.
We're going to vote tonight the proposed motion that is the town will need to come up with $4,624,470. That's in addition to our anticipated circuit breaker and our grants, because the actual amount we're going to spend on schooling here next year is $4,932,303. So we're voting a bottom line. We're not doing light item approval throughout the budget. So again, the reality we're with right now, there's still moving parts, there's still opportunities, but this is the reality. And if our director of special education, our principal, and our superintendent says that we can meet the legal obligation under the IEPs of all the students here, and we still have some room, I have the faith to proceed with that information at this point, because I got to see the menu, the macabre menu of where we could be cutting from this evening. And I also saw deeper cuts before we secured the $84,000 from the finance committee and the town manager. Now, this is even subject to the voters of Plympton themselves voting this budget through with the percentage increases attached to it at town meeting. And again, we're above 2.5% now on paper. It looks closer to a 4.5%. We're going to have to be able to articulate to voters in town and who come to town meeting where we're getting the revenues from, the additional Chapter 70, that the real net impact is 2.5% on the tax base of the Plympton residents. So lots of moving parts, but I would entertain a motion from someone to read the language.
I move that the Plympton School Committee approve $4,624,750 as the fiscal 2027 local education budget, operating budget, and further, that total appropriation of $4,624,470 is in compliance with the Education Reform Acts of 1993. Further, the school committee directs the superintendent to allocate the following additional funding sources, which total $307,553. FY anticipated circuit breaker special education reimbursement of $148,052, and anticipated grant and revolving account funding totaling $159,501. Final approved expenditures for the schools would be $4,932,303.
John, the second time you read the total up at the top, there's a misprint. Can you replace that with the first number?
462750.
$4,624,750 in both numbers.
Thank you very much. So John has made a motion. Do I have a second? Second from Brian. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any against?
No.
Any abstentions? So 4 yeas, 1 nay. The budget carries. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. I know that was a lot. I know that's just the surface of what we're all dealing with and feeling right now. But I appreciate everyone participating in a civil discourse on what we're facing right now with the Dennett budget. Moving on to administrative reports, Mr. Venita.
Thank you. I can incorporate some of the CASA updates as well.
Thank you, sir.
Since this committee last met February 9th, it's been a very interesting month. February 11th, we did have a staff luncheon provided by CASA. The 16th through the 20th was our regularly scheduled February vacation. And then we had February vacation 2.0 due to the thermal bombast, the large snowstorm that came. I would like to thank our custodial staff and the various town employees for getting us cleared out. They all did a phenomenal job. As we're starting to see some relief in and around the building from that, in the form of melting snow, we do continue to see some roof concerns in the usual areas. The one main area that is the largest concern is the oldest part, the flat roof, which is currently over the kindergarten portion, which is behind us that way. We did have some newer gutter damage to the building, which had not happened before. And that was in the back side of the building on the metal roof, which we've never had an issue there. Once things dry out a little bit and we get a chance to further investigate a little closer, we'll see what needs to be done over there.
Peter, are you anticipating being able to cover some of those in the budget this year?
I would say some, yes. Last time we had major gutter damage, John was, like most other things, paying by the linear foot to have it replaced. Without getting a chance to see the full extent of the damage out back, we'll definitely get Mr. Lawless involved and see what he's thinking might be the next appropriate course of action.
I think it would be worth I wonder if that would be worth understanding what the insurance policy would cover. You've got, given that that's obviously damage from the ice dams and snow. The roof is the roof. Yeah, that's. But you know, we have. I mean, the gutters should be there regardless. They should be just damaged. Damage is damage. So I guess that would be something to consider. I don't know whether that would be things up to the town, probably.
Mm-hmm.
So we may want to inquire someone's assistant about that.
Sure.
Just because I don't think that we just had a whole discussion about how much money there isn't, and I'm not sure we're going to be able to get anything additional for refunds for the new year. I think most of that list, unfortunately, I think is not going to make it. But that to me sounds like damage from the snowstorms, and maybe that would be something that would be covered.
We'll look into it, absolutely. We did find during one of the weeks off, I believe it was the second week, we had an unusual amount of water that was being used. After investigating several potential problems, we found that the cistern by the fire suppression room was calling us unnecessarily for additional water. The problem has been isolated, a temporary fix has been put in place. City Point Fire, who is our fire suppression company, is on top of it. Fire department is aware there's no impact on the safety of the building, and we should have that resolved shortly.
So was it selling the water or something?
I wish, John.
Where was the extra water going? Down the drain?
We're going to be looking into that as well.
It's probably a safety overflow in the cistern that if it's calling, it'll just force it down the drain.
Right. Okay.
So we're recycling things, which is we're paying to recycle.
Relocating.
I'm glad you found that.
It's,
Appreciate you finding that and noticing.
Can I ask how that was discovered?
Yeah.
The water usage? Was it electrical rates or?
Our chemical usage had been up.
Okay.
And then as we take daily readings, we were starting to notice that on a week that virtually nobody was in the building,
right.
we should not have had many more than couple thousand gallons tops. Even that would have been high, and some of the numbers that we were looking at, it didn't make sense. We
Okay.
searched the building, do we have something that's leaking? There was absolutely nothing leaking. Some of the pipes that run in the ceiling, if we had had these, it would have shown up somewhere.
Yeah.
The building, knock on wood, was essentially dry outside of the kindergarten. But that just led people to ask more questions, get more people involved, and get to the bottom of it. So, again, water in the roof, John, I put it on there just for you, and knowing how much you enjoy
Thank
both
you.
topics.
That's a cherry there.
Yep.
Cherry on top.
I did my best, but all joking aside, it's a problem that's we're on top of, and bottom line, it's not impacting the safety of the building right now, and we should be back to getting our numbers a lot more normal. CASA did have they made up their talent show, which was held at Silver Lake Regional Middle School on Friday night. This week at school, students and staff are celebrating Read Across America Week, which was postponed from the week that we missed. We have parent conferences coming up on the 26th. And then we actually start MCAS on April 1st. Students in grades 3 through 6 will all be starting to take their English language arts portion of MCAS. And then we will be meeting again, so it's felt like a long winter, but we're turning a corner. That's the one good thing about MCAS, is it means that spring is coming.
MCAS analogies, right?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I think that's about it from me.
Thank you, Mr. Veneto. Any questions for Peter? Great. Stephanie, do you have anything additional this evening for us?
No.
All right. Welcome aboard officially. Nice to have you with us. Dr. Clift?
Okay, I just have a few things tonight. We had a great day planned for February 23rd for professional development, but we've tried to retrofit a lot of that into the March 12th afternoon. And for the elementary schools, it will be a focus on the professional development that we had with the HMH, with the group, the publisher. So we'll be doing some of that professional development on the 12th. We also had a visit by the consulting group that's helping us with the core program review, TNTP. They came the week of February 9th into all of the elementary schools. And right now, what's happening with the PRISM grant is we're field testing CKLA, which is one of the programs. And we will soon be field testing the second program, which is Wonders. And we've extended that a little bit just to address the week that we missed, to make sure that we have enough time. And we'll be making a recommendation to the school committee in June. And the grant application for year 2 of that, I submitted about a week ago. So the deadline for that was March 20th. Hopefully that will yield another year of paid professional development stipends for teachers. And when I hear about that, I'll let you know. And on the 16th, we'll be presenting a progress report update to the Joint School Committee, looking at data for English language arts and math. That's it.
So I'd just like to say again, thank you to Dr. Clifford for pursuing that competitive grant and getting those resources to bear. We would be in a more dire situation here budgetarily if you hadn't done so. I hope you're successful in your bid to reapply. But I just wanted to make sure that I highlighted my thanks to you again for that work. Anybody else for Dr. Clifford? All right. Madam Superintendent?
I have, other than the budget, I have nothing else this evening, other than to thank our custodial staff, the towns, and the parents and staff for their patience as we took it day by day and communicated the decision to call school. It's based on a number of factors. And sometimes it's based on our ability to clean up the snow mess and make sure that we can get everyone in safely. So hopefully we won't have any more notices from.
What does that impact have to the end of the school year?
It does impact the end of the school. I think we said we we looked at the calendar, and I think we're at June 23rd. I sent it out to the admin team, so that we would have a running.
We are in far
Sense
better
of it.
shape than some other districts in the
yes.
state. Because June 30th is the cutoff,
Right.
but there's a weekend right before it that makes things a little bit hairy. So we're in good shape locally with the anticipated snow days and weather days or water days or whatever you may have. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Subcommittee reports, admin review.
Nothing on that.
Policy, nothing on policy. Negotiations.
Nothing on negotiations.
Nothing today. So,
And Union 31,
we met, and it was just the high-level summary. We voted the bus contract that we talked about last time, the 7th year. We voted some continuations of contracts, 3%, and then we added a net new position up in building for finance. We needed 3, 1, so that's a start. We retired out there for that, so that was about it's the high-level summary.
in our next meeting, I think Dr. Clifford just mentioned it, is April 16th.
Sure.
Okay. Pilgrim Area Collaborative, we still do not have a representative to Pilgrim Area Collaborative, but I am getting updates and feedback from Amy Courtwright from Silver Lake, who is on their board of directors right now. On to capital improvement.
So we talked last time, we had 2 different items that we were going to look to bring to the town. One was limited building assessment, because we already know the roof stinks, and we have to replace it, so we need to look at the roof, it still stinks. But we need to look at the other systems, including HVAC, boiler vents, water room, and so on and so forth. We need to start coming up with a plan of what to do. We can cast that. Of the 2, and then the other item was to have some additional funding for roof repairs to let the roof along until we can do a full replacement, and hopefully with some assistance from SBA. We were looking at hopefully 35,000, then we were waiting back. Peter, did you have any feedback from Mike about whether 35? We had talked about that number, but I think we're just going to go back to Habib and just get an idea of whether.
From my understanding, we've not heard back from Habib yet.
Okay. So do you mind following up with Mike? Certainly something sooner rather than later to make sure that that number is negotiable. Obviously, we'll have to go up to bid and we'll have to see. So we were thinking about 35 for that, and then we were thinking of 15 for the roof. I don't think the 15 is going to be something we're going to be able to get based on the discussions with.
So just for clarification, we're talking about 35 for the building assessment without the roof and 15 for temporary roof repairs?
Yes.
Okay.
So
And which one do you think
I
we're
think we need to do the building assessment because we need to start coming up with
real numbers and right priorities?
Likely it's going to involve doing some bonding and because where we have 6 units on the roof that need replacement. We talked about 30 2020, and we're thinking about 125 now.
Yeah.
Because apparently we have amount of gold and titanium. So you're looking at, we're looking at 700,000 just for that, and then we have the coordinate units there in each of the classrooms. So each classroom has its own unit as well, and that just add that up. So we're looking at a 1.2, 1.3, 1.4 million dollar chunk. It doesn't even include the roof, which probably would be around 3. So we have to come up with a plan for that and get that moving. Also to identify any other issues that we need to be aware of, like to your point of on that. And is that something that we could bond and pay for out of capital and not have to go for an override? So there's a whole bunch of work that I think needs to be done. We've kind of pressed pause for a couple of years because we've had tight budgets and lots of stuff like that. But we're on borrowed plan building, and if we have a building having an issue, to your point, the building is still sound, the building becomes unsound, but that's a real problem. So the storm's not getting quieter, it's getting storm here. But that's the one that I think if we can get one from them, I think it's the one that we really need to do. And then hopefully we can limp along through the year within the budget. And if we can't, then we'll have to go back. And, if there's a hole in the roof, we have to fix it. But,
And previous to that conversation, the finance committee and the town manager had already put a $12,500 warrant aside for the phone systems for the school as well.
yeah.
So that was another place where the town was trying to free up some money within our own budget and took that on as a warrant article instead.
So.
All right.
Have we gone? Just did a quick Google search. Massachusetts School Building Authority offers grants for school and roof repairs.
Yeah,
MSBA?
we're not there yet.
Okay.
So you have to. So that's what we're talking about. I think it's 2029 before we can.
Apply for that.
Based on when we did the building.
Got it.
Yeah. And so yes.
Good question, though.
And the good thing with the good and bad thing is that of course we've had a bunch of issues around the state back when they had everyone shovel their roofs with metal blade shovels, scraped every third roof in the state, put holes in it. So there's a lot of roofs that are sort of coming on looking for this, but there isn't much. A roof's a roof. You do a school building, often MSBA can put a lot of stuff into the building that they want. That ends up increasing the price, and so you don't make out as well as the reimbursement. But if we can get a third back from MSBA or 30% on a $3 million roof, then that's a better deal. So to do it ourselves, it's again, that's still a big project. So we have a lot coming, but we need to get our hands around the full picture to like they did at Silver Lake, to understand sort of what the issues are, where the priorities are. Sure that the building and dry.
And some of the grant programs look more favorably on places that have done a comprehensive study so that they understand what the priorities are. So this will set us up for better success in grants in the future.
In the formula, it's worth about 2.5% in additional funds from the state side. All right. Thank you to the capital improvement team. Legislative agent, I don't want to talk about it. Regionalization,
The Collins Center is working. We had a meeting about a month ago, and so they're getting going. They canceled their one for tomorrow because they really wasn't point talking. They're working, and they don't need us to inform on their working. One of the things we did talk about at the last meeting was just because we've had, if you go to the call, we sort of changed how financials are and kind of got them into a format that's more standard and one that should be better for us long term. Downside to that, of course, is that when you look back like at 3 to 5 years of financials, they don't line up. So we have last year's numbers, we have our current year's numbers, and so there's like, well, how do you really want us to look at your financials? So what we agreed on is that, it would be great to have 3 years, but we don't, so we need to move on from that. So we have last year's, and we can look to, the end of June when we finish up with this year's. And so this summer they can really dig into the financials and look at least the 2 years, with the caveat that it's only 2 years. But it is a set of numbers that they can dig into and look at that. In the meantime, they're doing a bunch of meetings, and they're looking at also doing sort of educational assessment as well. So this will be, this is going to, they aren't going to get a bunch of information over the summer and come out with sometimes they'll go, okay, we solved everything. This is going to be a good year-long project, and then may take longer to kind of come up with the ideas of what the outcomes could be, and then of course, depending on what that information is, what the towns decide to do with that status quo. So it's coming, but the financial piece, we all of us felt very strongly that we need to take a look at that and have, because that's the first question that anyone's going to ask, right? We say, hey, we want to make change X, or no, we're not going to make any change. They go, well, what does that mean financially? If you regionalize, we probably will no longer be a rural school district. And so for the later this year, it's that offset to something else that we get from that, maybe funding for transportation. recommend, but what does that mean? So there's a whole bunch of things that you have to look at from an offset perspective. It isn't all about cost, obviously, but it kind of is. So it is until it isn't. So all of that has to get done. We'll have to see what that shows up. And the one thing that we all know that we will have is we will actually have facts. Instead of people saying, well, we should do this, we should do that, because I think it's good. We'll have some data to back it up. So nothing in stone anytime soon.
Thank you. So, Chairman's prerogative. I cut a 2.5-minute long commercial specifically about Plympton and the Dennett Elementary and the impacts of the rural aid package not being voted in and the dire consequences it's having on our budget right now. I know we talk about it a lot. I don't know how many of you have actually looked into it, but it speaks to things that would have directly impacted the conversation and the tenor of this evening at the table. You know, from reimbursements the year in which they're encumbered to actually being able to share staff with other districts without having a regional agreement with them. There's much more to it than just the rural aid package. The rural schools bill is, excuse me, much more comprehensive. And this is not just school committee side. The superintendents had been advocating for it using superintendents from urban districts who benefited from the Student Opportunity Act, saying it's time for the rural schools. MTA and AFT had been involved in this. This is a full court press. But for those of you who keep hearing me say the rural schools bill, I really would appreciate if you look it up and you see what it would do, so you can be more well informed about what we're pushing for and how it would impact us here at the Dennett. Pardon me. Dates to remember. We have 2 early release days coming up. We have one on March 12th and one on March 26th. The one on March 26th is for parent conferences. April 3rd is a holiday. April 13th is the next time we'll be meeting as a committee. On the 16th, there's the joint school committee between Silver Lake and Union 31. And believe it or not, about a month and a week away, we have April vacation from April 20th through the 24th. Is there any further business before the committee this evening? Seeing none, I make a motion for us to adjourn to executive session, not to return to regular, under MGL Chapter 38, Section 21A2,
So
to discuss strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations for teachers concerning the February 23rd PD Day, and under MGL Section 7 to comply with their act under any general or special law for the approval of our executive session minutes from February 9th, 2026, and again, not to return to open.
So moved.
Do I have a second? All right. This is a roll call. So, Rob?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate you being here this evening.